The White House is projecting confidence in negotiations with Iran, seeing good progress towards a lasting deal. The U.S. is now allowing Tehran to sell oil in dollars for the first time in decades. And President Trump says unfrozen Iranian funds will be used to buy American farm goods. And as Iran tries to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz, the president says oil is flowing.
We're doing very well with respect to the Hormuz Strait. We took in more oil yesterday than has ever gone through the strait. You probably see that we have an oil gusher. The strait is totally open.
As long as they respect us. I don't want to use the word fear because that's an inappropriate word. But as long as they respect us, we're not going to have any trouble. We have total control of the strait.
Okay, so Steve, I want you to weigh in on this. I think the sell-off we're seeing on the NASDAQ is unrelated to the war, but certainly the oil prices right now, under $73 a barrel, are reflecting what we're seeing. Some problems I have, and we alluded to it a little bit in the previous hour with Charlie, with this deal are the Iranians selling oil in dollars. Part of the strategy should be keeping them on the mat and not giving them funds, right, to be able to get back up again. But having said that, that's contributing to the oil price going down. And so I'm wondering where exactly we're going here. The frozen assets, are they really going to use them to buy soybeans and wheat from us? I mean, it sounds good, but is it good?
Well, if you believe that, I've got a bridge here in New York that I'll offer you shares in, and guaranteed never to go down in price. But I'll be blunt. The mistake was doing the ceasefire prematurely, and now we're suffering the consequences for it. And the Iranians believe they've won this war strategically. They took a beating militarily from us and from the Israelis. Our military performed absolutely brilliantly. But the fact of the matter is, the regime survived. The regime is now seen in the eyes of the world as de facto control or veto over the Strait of Hormuz, which they did not have before the war. They've done nothing about the proxies. They've done nothing about the missiles. They have promises about maybe nukes in the future. So how is the world supposed to interpret that?
Can I ask you a question, though, on that? Because we've been
charge.
having a lot of debate on this program about the strait. And Dagan, I'll borrow her phrase, Iran had one bullet and they shot it. That was closing the strait. But we sort of proved that economic freedom, if we do the blockade, block Iran, but everyone else can come out. Or sort of longer term, the UAE, Japan, other Gulf nations have come out and said, we're done relying on the Strait of Hormuz. We're really going to start to accelerate to bring down our reliance on the strait to zero. We're going to be really focused on pipelines, east to west, other pipelines. And so I think long term, and I hear you about the frustrations right now, but did this not sort of wake us all up that this is Iran's bullet? But now we're all getting around it. The way that we woke up to China in COVID and we said, I'm not going to rely on you for supply chain issues anymore because you're an unreliable partner. We're now exporting more oil to Europe because they're not getting it through the strait. So long term, though, could this be a positive as we reduce everyone's reliance on the strait?
Long term, and we've discussed this in the past, building those pipelines is absolutely essential to reduce the dependence on the strait. But the fact of the matter is, before this war, nobody really conceived that Iran was going to have a veto power of any sort over the strait. And now they do. And so strategically, they're seen as having gained, despite the huge beating they've taken. They're now getting money without really having any real guarantees. There's talk about inspectors. That's great. But if you have that work at all, you have to have them on the ground all the time, 24/7, anywhere in the country, anytime. Anything less than that is a cave-in. And so the focus should be not just on Iran, but how do we reassure our allies in Europe and in Asia that the U.S. is still a reliable partner?
What if Europe isn't our ally anymore, though?
The what?
What if the Europeans, sorry to jump in, aren't our allies anymore?
The Europeans are our allies.
Okay.
We should have learned that from the 1930s. If Europe gets in trouble, we're in trouble. If Asia gets in trouble, we're in trouble. We're a transocean nation.
Can I just touch on this long-term aspect that you're talking about? Because I think it's really important. And even if, in a perfect world, this deal was actually intact and the Iranians were going to somewhat abide by it for the next 3 years under President Trump, what if? what happens next? Because
You
these
hit the point
build-outs
exactly.
take a long time.
The
And when
Iranians-
President Trump isn't in office and the Iranians have another Joe Biden in office that they know they can trample over, or an Obama for that matter, all of a sudden you've got a situation where nobody's inspecting anything. The store is completely open. And what really has changed, and I agree with you regarding the Strait wasn't even an issue until this conflict came up. And that was the big thing of the memorandum of understanding was, oh, well, we're opening up the Strait. Well, we never had a problem with the Strait
Well,
before.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna do something very hazardous and disagree with Steve Forbes on that. I guess I'm gonna disagree with you too.
Okay.
I can't fire you, so
I know
go
this
ahead.
is great. I love this. I can't lose. I think for 47 years, everybody knew Iran had control over the Strait or a veto over the Strait. That's why nobody did anything, because they knew if they did, Iran would do what they just did now. Okay, so for the first time, Trump said, I'm going to call that and I'm going to see what happens. Okay, but he was smart about it because he did a couple things before that. One is he lined up all of these Gulf neighbors. Okay, he went out and made friends with these Gulf neighbors so that when Iran fired their bullet and closed the Strait, all the neighbors said, we're done with Iran, we're with the U.S. And number two, Trump reversed a decades-long decline in our energy prospects. So he made us the place the world goes when Iran closes the Strait. In the short term, there was pain. But in the long term, he has changed the globe. Everybody is saying, we're getting out of the Strait. Everybody. Japan is saying it. The UAE is saying it. And I agree, it takes time to do that, but they are going to move at lightning speed to get it done. And in the meantime, we are the country. We are the power everyone is looking for to balance their energy needs. I don't think that, I think the Hormuz was always an issue. That's why for almost 50 years, nobody did a dang thing about this very patently obvious problem called Iran.
Well, on the Strait of Hormuz, again, it wasn't an issue before this war because everyone felt that it wouldn't happen. We did not believe that Iran was going to close the Strait of Hormuz, just as when we flagged those ships in the so-called tanker war of the late 1980s. They didn't close the Strait of Hormuz. So that was a new thing. We didn't fully anticipate it, and certainly we were caught flat-footed in responding to it. That happens in war, so I don't get upset about that. The question is, what do you do about it? And doing that ceasefire prematurely told the world, like it or not, that the United States doesn't have the stomach to see things through. And in terms of energy, we're doing it already. Without the war, we're getting our energy act together. So it wasn't dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. And so in terms of the future, in terms of Iran now thinks Trump will do nothing. President Trump will do nothing because the upcoming elections, and then he'll be a lame duck, and then they can wait it out. And just as they've done for 47 years, they just feel that they've triumphed. Whatever they believe in, they believe this shows they're ultimately going to win. They took the worst in the world's eyes from Israel and from the United States, and now they survived and have a power that nobody thought would be exercised
and
before.
And the president keeps saying, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, don't you dare cross me, I'm gonna do it, and Dagan, he does nothing. It still has another threat out there that if you don't comply within 60 days, I'm gonna do it. But does anybody believe him?
He's done, I mean,
Other than
bombed the living daylights out of their
other than what he
nuclear
calls
program.
love taps, you know, an occasional bombing here, an occasional bombing there, the kind of fury that we unleashed at the end of on February 28th, nobody believes we're going to do that again, including the Israelis. And the fact that we allowed the Iranians to tie a deal to having the Israelis not respond to the missiles being fired by Hezbollah, that's exactly what they wanted. They show the world they can protect their proxies, even when they're flat on their backs.
Well, diplomats from Oman met with the foreign minister, Abbas Araji, and chief negotiator from Iran. And Iran and Oman have decided that they're going to examine charging fees to get through the Strait of Hormuz. They put out a statement about it, I believe, this morning. And they emphasized in the statement their sovereignty and sovereign rights over the waters in the Strait of Hormuz. I'm just going to read through it. And in the statement, they said, in order to reach an agreement on the future administration of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and the services that will be provided in this regard and the cost associated with them. So it's not tolls, but it's going to be a fee that Oman and Iran potentially charge for passage.
Yeah, if it walks
so
like a
what
duck
does that
and
tell
quacks
you
like a
in
duck.
terms of the posture?
Well,
how they're
just hit on-
emboldened?
Yeah, this tells you another thing. Freedom of navigation has been a hallmark of U.S. foreign policy for over 200 years. That is now in jeopardy. They're even talking to some countries in Asia about charging fees in the Strait of Malacca. China is continuing to try to establish control of the critical South China Sea. So that was another thing. The idea of charging toll of one way or those waterways wasn't on the table before. Now it is. And so we've got a lot of work ahead. And by the way, the neighbors of Iran, the Saudis, have a very different interest now in their minds than from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. And so you see this division there. Turks have their own interests there. They don't want to see Iran completely destroyed. And so you have these blocs beginning to emerge in the Middle East. So as Hardy would say to Laurel in that old comedy duo, you've made a fine mess of things.
Well, I do want to point out, though, there's a lot of, even in the media coverage, a lot of counting of vessels going through the Hormuz on a day-to-day basis. This many ships yesterday and this many ships 2 days prior. It's not just about the crossings in the Hormuz. As we've been talking about since this conflict started, you have to count the barrels, the additional barrels that are going through the pipelines across Saudi Arabia, through the UAE, rail, on land. So oil, it's about how much is getting out of the Persian Gulf first. But the United States, and I will repeat myself until I am purple in the face, what forced our hand, I think, is just pure energy inventories. That it was, if we got the SPR numbers yesterday, that we put 9.1 million barrels into the market out of the SPR is the second biggest drawdown in the history of our strategic petroleum reserve. It's at the lowest level since 1983. As of last week, total U.S. stockpiles were at a 40-year low. We were like at a point, you don't run out of oil, but you get a spike in prices to destroy demand. And this nation was not willing politically to deal with a $2 premium to fight the Iranian regime or a $3 premium on gasoline to fight the Iranian regime. So they just cut bait and said, we're doing a peace deal.
So in that sense, Iran won strategically. And in terms of the president, he did give a speech about the war several weeks into it. Those who watched it were persuaded by it. But at the beginning of the conflict, that's when that speech should have been made. Most of Americans would have supported it if they told this is necessary, however hard and long as Churchill would put it, it may be, they would have supported him. But they never thought they're getting, every day it seemed, 2 weeks it'll be over, 2 weeks it'll be over. And then prematurely cutting off the war with 25% of the targets still untouched, Kharg Island still untouched, the overland route still untouched, and the RGC still having the guns. And we knew who they were. If we'd continued the war, it would have been over by now, and we wouldn't have to worry about inventories or anything else.
All right, we have to leave it there. Great analysis, Steve.